Rain slicked the gray sidewalks outside Westbridge High, turning the maple leaves into glossy coins that clung to shoes and tires in the hems of too long jeans. Morning bells tolled, lockers slammed, and the building exhaled that Monday smell of pencil shavings, floor cleaner, and cafeteria coffee. Maya Johnson adjusted her backpack straps and kept her chin steady as the tidal swell of students carried her down the hall. She'd learned to walk like water calm. Sure, quiet enough to avoid attention, but strong enough to hold her course. 2 weeks. And she still felt the invisible weight of being new and black and not eager to answer questions. Learned to smile without inviting more. She'd learned to file information quickly, who watched, who didn't, which teachers called her sweetheart, and which ones meant it. She'd learned the names Vivian, with her delicate eyeliner wings, nor who doodled galaxies on her notebooks, Jacob in chess club. And inevitably Chad Walker. He moved down the corridor like he owned the zip code. Head high, shoulders back. Smirk preloaded. When a freshman dropped a binder, Chad kept walking, the toe of his white sneaker kicking a folder out of the way like trash. People made room for him the way water parted around a prow. Maya slid into English on the bell. Mr. Holcomb was writing today's prompt in looping chalk. Write about a time you chose to hold your tongue. The phrase made a muscle in Maya's jaw jump. She took a seat near the back, clicked her pen, and breathed through the old muscle memory the way her body read rooms first. Exits, waits, trajectories, threats. She wrote anyway. She didn't write about growing up in foster homes, because that wasn't the story she told at school. She didn't write about the night cameras flashed hot and white while a man with a kind, deep laugh crouched to her level at a charity event and said, "Hi, I'm Vin." She didn't write about the months that followed, about lawyers and guardians and the strangest thing she'd ever felt: steadiness. When papers were signed and strangers became family, she didn't write about learning to hold a plank until her arms shook, or about the weekend mornings running canyons while the sun turned the sky into a bruise before healing it blue. She didn't write about learning to cook eggs or change a tire or breathe through fear. She wrote about once, 7th grade. When a boy backed another kid into a corner and she knew exactly how to stop it hand, she didn't. She wrote about how that silence felt like a stone in her pocket for months. When the bell rang, Mr. Holcomb asked for volunteers to read. No one raised a hand. Maya's luck held until he pointed, gentle but firm. Maya, do. Voices matter. Her voice didn't shake. She read just the facts, just the sensation of choosing quiet over action. When she finished, the room hummed with a kind of careful attention that could have gone either way. Then a voice snickered from near the windows. Sounds like a sob story. Chad didn't even bother to pretend his mouth wasn't moving. The class tensed. Mr. Holcomb's eyes flicked toward Chad. That's enough. Chad leaned back. Just saying. Some of us wouldn't stand around and watch. We'd handle it. Maya capped her pen. Some of us talk a lot about what we'd do in stories while doing nothing in real life. A ripple of ooze. Chad's lip curled, but Mr. Holcomb cut in. Bell's about to ring. Save your poetry, Mr. Walker. By lunch, the story had a dozen versions. By the time Maya reached the cafeteria line, metal trays rattling, fluorescent lights turning food the color of paste, people were glancing up, glancing away. She paid for a chicken sandwich and a bottle of water and started. Toward an empty table? She didn't see Chad until he rose from his chair. It's a table of boys around him going quiet. That hush that means trouble has taken the stage. He stepped into her path. He was taller by 2 inches, thick through the shoulders from football. His smile didn't reach his eyes. You got a lot to say for the new girl. Maya stopped. The sandwich smelled like salt and steam. She met his gaze without letting it snag. Excuse me? He glanced at her tray. What? No joke? No clever line? He raised his voice like he was on stage. She thinks she's better than us, she said. I think you enjoy an audience. The boys hooted. Chad's mouth thinned. He looked at her tray, at her hand. He lifted 2 fingers like a conductor. Oops, he said, and knocked the tray. It happened fast gravity. The thunk of plastic, the arc of greasy bread. The shock in the pit of her stomach canned. Then there was food on the floor, a smear across her shoes. The crowd sound was a sharp inhale. In her mind, her father's voice, careful and slow, the one he used over breakfast and on drives and during bad days. The first thought is the fire. The second thought is the water. But the second thought, win. She breathed once. Her eyes lifted to Chad's face, and she looked at him, not above, not below, not away. Pick it up. His brows rose. What? You made a mess? Pick it up? His laugh wasn't loud. It was short and mean. He took a step closer. Don't tell me what to do. He reached toward her shoulder, casual like a flick that would look harmless if a teacher happened to glance over. A half-dozen thoughts passed through her head in a clear line. Angle of his wrist, weight shift, distance to the nearest table. The geometry of hands. She moved only because he did. Asterisk. Her left hand caught his wrists before his fingers landed, thumb, over tendon, fingers controlling the pivot. She stepped to the side and used his momentum. It wasn't big, not flashy, nothing like the choreographed fights she'd seen on set. It was the small, efficient movement her father had taught her on the driveway one afternoon, the type, he said, was drilled into stunt crews for safety, control, don't escalate. The result was that Chad's body tipped off balance, his hand twisting just enough to make his knees dip and his chest thump the edge of a table. His friends stood so fast there. Chairs scraped. Maya released him instantly, palms open at her sides. Her voice was quieter than before. Don't touch me. There was no teacher in sight. The girl near the milk cooler whispered, Oh my God, like a hymn. Maya crouched, gathered the tray and the mess, dumped it. Got a new sandwich from a wide-eyed lunch lady, and walked away without looking back. Her heart thudded in her ears through the rest of lunch. Biology and the slow drag of last period. After school. The early fall light made the parking lot a sheet of pale gold. The football team clustered near trucks, laughing too loud. Kept her stride even. She had one rule for herself. End the day with the same breath you started it. She'd almost made it to the curb when a voice behind her said, Hey. She turned. Chad. Two teammates behind him, wide like bookends. The lot had thinned. The buses were gone. Teachers' cars sat in tidy lines, windows reflecting sky. Maya's pulse kicked. Her stance changed in the smallest ways, weighed over the balls of her feet, shoulders loose, angles soft. He stopped within arm's reach. Anger had turned his cheeks the blotchy pink of a sunburn. You think you can embarrass me? He asked. You embarrassed yourself, Maya said. Pick it up. His hand twitched. She saw it, and he saw that. She saw it, and suddenly he was more careful. He exhaled, tried for a smile that was meant to be friendly, like he was going to sell her something expensive and bad for her. Look, we got off on the wrong foot. Why don't you apologize, and we'll call it even. A door shut, somewhere far in the lot. A bird landed on a light pole and skittered. Maya thought of her father's advice again. If you can leave, leave. If you can talk, talk. If you must act, move first toward safety, not glory. No, she said. I'm going home. He stepped to block her path. It wasn't dramatic, just a shift, like he was a door suddenly stuck. The boy on his right snickered. Maya took one small step back, and the unmistakable growl of a V8 rolled up the hill like thunder, and every head in the lot turned. The SUV wasn't flashy, no chrome, no screaming paint, just black and clean and inevitable. It cut its engine, and the world felt too quiet. The driver's door opened. The man who stepped out wore a dark t-shirt, and the kind of calm that made noise go soft around him. His head was shaved, jaw shadowed, stance loose. When he looked across the lot, his eyes found hers in half a heartbeat. Hey, kiddo, he said, like he said it every day, because he did. Good day? The boys had not yet decided what to do with their faces. Chad's mouth actually fell open. Maya's throat loosened. Getting there. Asterisk Vin's gaze slid to the cluster of boys, then back to Maya, then to them again. He didn't square his shoulders or raise his voice. Didn't need to. You okay? I'm okay, she said. He nodded like he'd needed to hear it out loud. He looked at Chad next. Easy. You got something to say to my daughter? Chad swallowed. Words got lost in his posture. His eyes darted to his teammates, back to Maya, back to the man in front of him, whose face he knew from billboards and trailers. And that one franchise his dad watched every Thanksgiving after football. No, sir? Vin's voice stayed even, the kind of tone that made people be honest. You sure? Silence bent the air. The boys were suddenly very aware of the vast sky above them, the open asphalt, the echo of their own heartbeat. Chad said, I'm sorry, and his voice did not quite steady. Vin nodded once, like a judge rendering a small verdict. I appreciate that. The public theater was over. Vin put a hand at Maya's back and guided her to the passenger side. He tapped the roof twice before he got behind the wheel, pulled out smooth and unhurried, the SUV slipping into the river of afternoon traffic with a grace that looked like it had been practiced. They were 3 blocks away before either of them spoke. The tension left Maya's chest like a valve opening. Didn't want you to have to show up like that, she said. He glanced over. Warmth in his eyes that was not performed for any camera. I didn't show up for him. I showed up for you. She laughed once, surprised by how much she needed to. It was very dramatic. Try. He checked the mirror, caught her smile, and smiled himself. You didn't hit him. Why? Didn't. You could have. I could have. She uncapped her water. You taught me not to. I taught you to know the difference. He drummed his fingers on the wheel. What happened? She told him. The edited version. Not the one people told to make themselves sound brave or blameless. She told him where she'd felt herself go hot, where she'd been tempted to push. How she'd handled the grab in the cafeteria and the parking lot. When she finished, he exhaled through his nose. I'm proud of you. He meant it. The words added a layer to the day, something like armor but softer. You'll come to the school if you want? The pattern starts. If an adult needs a reminder of their job, he looked at her again. You want me to come now? She thought of the eyes in the cafeteria, the exquisitely tuned radar of a high school for weakness or strength. Not yet. We watch. They stopped at a red light. On the sidewalk, a father lifted a child onto his shoulders. The leaves along the curb shivered in a new wind. Vin's voice dropped, the tone he used when he was moving from advice to a lesson. What you did in their control takes more strength than smashing somebody's nose. You picked yourself first. I'm glad. At home, the kitchen smelled like garlic and rosemary. The house was warm without being intimidating, full of framed photos, some glamorous, many not. In one, Maya was laughing so hard she'd blurred. A little kid again, a smear of joy. Another, she stood with her head tucked into Vin's chest, in a way you probably wouldn't put on a magazine cover. The dog Brutus, whose name was a joke because he was more sheep than wolf, dumped a tail and leaned his entire 80 pounds against Maya's leg as if to say, this is where you belong. They cooked. Most nights they did. She chopped. He seared. He told a story about a director he admired who never raised his voice. She told him about Mr. Holcomb's assignment and what she'd written. He raised his eyebrows at the choice to confess a past. Silence. That's braver than it sounds. When they ate, he listened more than he talked. When she went to do homework, he left her alone. When she finished, he knocked on her door. Driveway? He asked, and she nodded. They didn't train to fight, trained to move. They trained to breathe, to leave, to center. The driveway was wide and the evening warm. He set 2 cones 10 feet apart. Footwork, he said, and they did a slow dance across the concrete, steps forward, back, left, right. Nothing theatrical, nothing that would look good on a poster. When she misstepped, he didn't tease. When he got an angle wrong, she corrected him. They finished with planks under the porch light, shoulder blades finding the line between effort and ease. As she showered, she replayed the day, making small edits, deciding which moments to keep and which to delete from memory. Before she slept, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Watch your back. It wasn't signed. Didn't need to be. She stared at it for 1 long minute, the way you watch a spider and decide whether to kill it or carry it outside. Then she took a screenshot, sent it to her father, and typed, "Got this. I'm fine. Just keeping you looped." 3 dots appeared, then, "Proud of you for telling me. We'll handle it together." The next morning, rumors moved like a fog machine. Had been turned on under the school. By second period, people were whispering a dozen versions of the parking lot scene. In some, Vin had yelled. In others, he'd made Chad do push-ups. And most Chad had apologized. That part was true. Chad didn't. Seek her out. She felt him in classes like a pressure change before Storm's discomfort and a brittle energy. In math, he kept his eyes low. At lunch, he stayed at his table, glancing up and away like a moth that couldn't decide which light to chase. You could almost see him calculating what would restore the balance of his reputation. The text message sat in her pocket like a pebble, and she left her phone off. Wednesday, principal called her in. Mrs. Klein wore a necklace that caught light in small sunbursts. She folded her hands that had expensive rings. "I heard there was a situation," Maya told the version with. "No heat and no headlines." Mrs. Klein nodded slowly, the way people nod when they are measuring liability. "We have 0 tolerance for physical altercations," good Maya said. Mrs. Klein waited for more. When she didn't get it, she tested a new approach. "You must know your father is a person of interest to the community." "He's my dad," Maya said. "Of course." Mrs. Klein's smile was well practiced. "If there's anything we can do to make you feel welcome, hold students accountable," Maya said. "That would help." Back in the hallway, Nora caught up with her, breathless. "You okay?" "I'm okay." "You need anything? You come sit with us at lunch." "Vivian says she'll fight a quarterback in a heartbeat and she's barely 5'1". "But we're trying to keep her out of jail." Maya grinned, sudden and real. "I'd pay to see that." They sat together. Chad didn't come over. But on Thursday, after last bell, as Maya zipped her backpack, a voice murmured from behind her. "You think you're safe?" Asterisk. She turned. The boy was unfamiliar. Sophomore, maybe. Narrow shoulders, acne blooming under a too-tight baseball cap. He swayed slightly like he was on a boat no one else felt. His eyes had the wired shine of too much energy drink. Too much. Need to be seen. His phone was in his hand. Camera already recording. "Hi," Maya said, neutral. She was aware of the door, the clock, the desk in the corner. A teacher should have been here and wasn't yet. "What's your name? You don't need my name," he said. "Chad says you think you're tough." She didn't take a step toward him. She didn't give him a show. "I think you're standing too close to someone who's trying to impress the wrong people." He laughed, sharp. "Say that again?" The door opened. Mr. Holcomb stepped in, saw the angle, zeroed in. "Everything good here?" The boy's posture changed in an instant. He slid his phone into his pocket. "Yeah, we're good." He brushed past Mr. Holcomb with teenage theatricality and was gone. Maya let out the breath she'd been holding. Mr. Holcomb's eyes were kind. "You tell me if you need me to walk you to your next class. I mean it. Thank you." Outside. She texted her father the new information. The reply came quick. "Home talk. We'll set some lines." When she got there, he was on the back porch, phone in hand. Expression like weather gathering, but not yet breaking. "I don't want your world to have to collide with mine like this," she said. "Too late," he said gently. "We live in one world. It's messy. We figure it out." What if Chad sends someone else? If it turns into, I don't know, clout for them? We take the clout away. He set the phone down. We go upstream. This isn't about a kid with a camera. This is about a system that says certain kids get to feel big by making other kids feel small. He called his lawyer, not to sue, but because his lawyer knew people. Who knew the language that made schools remember their responsibilities? He called the principal, respectful but immovable. He asked for a meeting with parents and coaches. He asked for policy printed on paper, not promises floating in emails. He did it calmly. He did it without throwing his name like a brick. He did it as a father whose job, like any father, was to protect. Asterisk, be ready. He told Maya that night as they washed dishes. Sometimes when bullies are called to a table, they break the table. That can look louder than it is. Don't mistake noise for force. She slept well for the first time all week. Friday morning came bright and clear. The meeting was set for the afternoon. At lunch, Vivian handed Maya a pastel pink macaron from a box she'd made. Consider this moral support. You brought a bakery to school? I have stress hobbies. Vivian lowered her voice. So Nora says you shouldn't walk alone today because people are idiots. I like Nora, Maya said. Good, we're adopting you. The cafeteria was buzzing louder than usual, the strange, nervous energy of a day that would end early for staff meetings. Chad sat with his usual circle, but his laugh kept getting cut off in the middle, like it kept tripping. Maya ate her sandwich. Halfway through, she felt the prickle that meant eyes on the back of her neck. As she turned, a group of boys not from their grade had formed a sloppy crescent near the far wall. Phones in hands. That light, the ugly, hungry kind, that turned other people into content burned in their faces. One of them lifted his chin at Maya and called across the room, Hey Vin's kid, do a trick. Vivian muttered, I will throw. This macaron, like a discus. Maya stood. She was not going to perform. She was going to leave. Stepped around the table, moved toward the exit. Two of the boys drifted to intercept. Slipped to Maya's side without asking. Jacob from. Chess was suddenly there as well. A surprise piece on the board. We're walking you out, he said simply. Thank you, Maya, said. The boys tried a trick of geometry body placement to make a bottleneck. Maya changed angles, a soft pivot, and kept moving. She didn't shove. She didn't drop her center of gravity. The thing about making a scene is you need someone to clap. She refused the role. Outside, the sky was vast and perfect. The parking lot felt like a shallow stadium. The boys followed. Nurse fingers found Maya's sleeve like a tether. At the far end, near the bleachers, a figure leaned against the rail and checked his phone. Chad He looked up and saw the procession he hadn't asked for but had clearly imagined. His face went complicated emotions stew you only got at this. Age, bravado, curdling with fear, the need to be leader warring with the need to be liked. He pushed off the rail and took 3 hard steps forward. Enough, Maya said quietly, mostly to herself. He stopped. There was a long beat where birdsong seemed too loud. You think you won? He said, not taking his eyes off her. You didn't. This isn't a game, she said. You made me look small. You did that, Nora exhaled. A whisper of laughter at Maya's back. People had gathered at the edges now because this is what people do. Teachers stood at the doors, making calculations about the exact moment they should intervene. The boys with phones were already filming. Framing. Say you're sorry, Chad said, grasping for a script that might give him the upper hand. For the cafeteria? For the parking lot. She thought about what apologies mean, about how grown men sometimes use the word like a wrench to twist people back into place. No, she said, but I'll say this. What you did was wrong. Fix it. He barked a laugh that ran ahead of his heart. Or what? Your dad shows up again? He mimicked the tapping on the car roof, the concierge of power. What? You gonna call him? She looked at him like he was a person and not a headline. I don't need to call him to know I'm not alone. An adult voice finally cut across the air. Phones away. Coach Hernandez strode into the scene. Like a whistle. Now, the spell broke. A few kids flinched and obeyed, a few didn't. He looked at Chad. Office now? Chad stared a second too long, then turned and walked, heat radiating off him. He paused to throw over his shoulder. This isn't over. Maya watched him go and felt a mixture of relief and an old, unspent anger she refused to feed. Can be, she said softly. But he was already gone. The meeting that afternoon was in the library. The principal, 2 vice principals, the counselor, Coach Hernandez. 3 parents, including Chad's and Vin. Maya had asked to be there. Ving had asked twice whether she was sure. She was. If people were going to decide things on her behalf, she wanted them to do it while looking into the eyes of the person those decisions would affect. Mrs. Klein opened with policy. The counselor spoke about restorative practices. Coach Hernandez talked about team culture, voice not rising, hands folded like he'd been to too many meetings like this. Chad's father wore a tailored suit and a tight smile, and he said words that sounded like concern and felt like containment. Boys will be boys in a varnished vocabulary. Chad's mother looked at her hands. Vin waited, and the room's oxygen had been used by everyone else. He spoke. My daughter won't be a lesson in someone else's growth arc, he said simply. She doesn't exist to train other people. Not to be cruel, the school is responsible for safety. The team is responsible for culture. The parents are responsible for their kids. I'm responsible for her. Chad's father bristled. Are you implying we aren't responsible parents? I'm saying be better, Vin said, not unkindly. I'm saying don't lawyer. Your way out of raising a decent human? Silence. The counselor cleared her throat. Chad, would you like to say something to Maya? Chad stared at the table, and he lifted his eyes to Maya's. They were wet in a way he would have hated. To be seen? I'm sorry I embarrassed you, he muttered. You didn't, Maya said, and didn't soften it. You embarrassed yourself. The counselor tried again. Chad, can you say what you did? Accountability starts with naming actions. Chad swallowed. I knocked your lunch. I tried to corner you. I texted you. Vin's eyes sharpened. Mrs. Klein stiffened. You sent a threatening message? It wasn't. Chad caught himself. Then low. Yes. The meeting ended with consequences that would look measured when printed. A suspension for Chad. Removal from 2 games. A school-wide assembly on harassment and bystander intervention. A formal communication from the district about expectations and resources. Increased teacher presence during unstructured times. And, at Maya and Vin's request, a restorative circle later only, if Maya chose it once safety felt achieved. Not as a shortcut around accountability. Outside, the air smelled like rain again. When they were alone by the SUV, Vin leaned against the door and looked at her in that soft, unguarded way. You did good. She set her forehead against his shoulder for a second. I want to go home. Let's go home. You'd think a story like that ends with the meeting. It didn't. The next weeks were the slow work of culture changing, which is to say, they were messy. Some kids said nice things like they were reading off cue cards. Some avoided her. Some came up with their own stories of survival to tell her. In hallways, like they saw her as a permission slip. Some boys made jokes under their breath, because boys will test fences even when the electricity is clear. Maya found a rhythm class. Lunch with Nora and Vivian and Jacob, study group on Thursdays. Driveway drills. She joined the after-school film club because she liked the smell of cables and the way light looked when you bent it into stories. She helped the AV team set up for assemblies. She learned the weight of a boom mic. She asked questions no one else thought to ask and avoided questions that made people into content. Asterisk one afternoon in October. The school hosted a charity car show on the field as a fundraiser for the arts. Vin brought an old rebuilt muscle car and parked it at the edge under a banner that read Film and Tech Fund. He posed for photos he didn't want to but took anyway, because he understood what faces do for causes. We spent more time talking to the kids running the camera table than to the mayor. He showed Jacob how to coil cable correctly. He asked Nora what she wanted to shoot next. He asked Vivian about the bakery and her future, and took home a box of pastries with the solemnity of a state visit. Chad came. He came with his parents. He came with a stiffness around his mouth, the kind that says a conversation has been had at home. He kept his distance. He looked at the car longer than he meant to. Later, when the sun had dipped and the crowds thinned, he drifted closer. Maya saw him coming and did not move away. Vin was talking to a kid about camera rigs. Chad hovered, then stepped up. Maya, he said. She turned to face him. Chad, I'm doing the sessions, he said, like she needed the evidence. With Coach and the counselor, I'm trying. "'Kay," she said. A beat. They looked at the car again like it might give him a line. I don't expect you to forgive me, Coach, she said, not cruel. Forgiveness isn't a vending machine. He huffed a laugh that surprised them both. You're funny, and you're learning to be honest. She tipped her head. Keep going, he nodded. He moved to leave. Then he turned back. Raw, my dad, he thinks. He thinks if people see me as weak, I won't make it. He taught me a certain way to be. Maya felt something move in her chest that wasn't pity, exactly something like recognition for the chains. People think our jewelry. You get to unlearn things. How? Find a better teacher, she said softly, glancing at her father. Across the way. Start with your mom. She looks like she knows a lot. Stad shifted like she'd reached in and adjusted a vertebrae. He nodded again, then left before he messed it up. The school assembly 2 weeks later was called Strength and Story. They asked Maya if she'd speak. She said she would if she could rewrite the usual script. They gave her the mic. On the day, the gym smelled like varnish and teenage energy. Teachers lined the walls. The principal introduced the event without using the word bullying 7 times in the first sentence. Vin stood in the back, baseball cap low, just another dad. Maya took the center of the court, not because she wanted to, but because she could. Asterisk, she didn't tell the cafeteria story. She told the 7th grade story, the one where she didn't act, the one she'd read in Mr. Holcomb's class. She told the room what it felt like to choose silence, to carry the weight of that choice. She didn't aim it like a spear at anyone in particular. She put it in the middle like a stone. Then she spoke to the kids who felt small on purpose. The people who teach you that smallness is your job are wrong. Your job is to take up the shape of yourself without apology. She ended with the simplest thing. Ask yourself who you want to be the day after the moment comes. Practice being that now. Nor cried openly. Vivian took notes like she'd write it on a cake later. Jacob clapped in a way that felt like a secret handshake with the world. Even some of the boys who'd hovered at walls looked at their shoes like they'd been told a password they wanted to remember it after. When people surged, Vin slipped out the side door and waited in the corridor. Maya found him there. He bumped her shoulder with his. You were yourself. Yeah? You hungry? Always? They drove out past the edge of town to a diner with a neon sign that buzzed like a cicada. They sat in a red booth and ate burgers and fries and a chocolate shake they pretended they would share equally. It was quiet enough that they could hear the clink of forks at the next table. They talked about everything except school. Then November came. A week before Thanksgiving break, it rained hard. The lot turned into a shallow lake. Maya lent Noor her extra sweater and then remembered she would want it back because it still smelled like home. They had a chem quiz that made everyone question the purpose of bonds. They had a fire drill in. The rain that made everyone hate authority. On Wednesday after last bell, on the hallway bulletin board, someone pinned a printout photo of Maya in the cafeteria, hand on Chad's wrist, frozen mid-move, captioned with 2 words, tough. Girl, it was meant to be an insult that sounded like praise. It was meant to frame the narrative, to render her a trope. People gathered to laugh or admire or decide. Maya stood and watched herself become a postcard. Then someone taped a new piece of paper under it. The handwriting was messy and familiar. Control isn't weakness. No signature. But she knew. Mr. Holcomb pretended to dust the board with his hand and straighten the pages so both were visible. Kids read the second line. Some nodded. Some scoffed. The world did what it always disargued with itself. At dinner that night, Maya told Vin about the flyer. He listened. He didn't rush to the printer. He didn't announce a plan to buy the billboard on the highway. He asked, "What do you want to do?" "Nothing," she said. "I want it to die of disinterest." He lifted his fork, then lowered it, then smiled like he couldn't help it. "I like how your brain works." "Me too," she said. On Friday, someone had drawn a small heart next to the words "Control isn't weakness." On Monday, the flyer was gone. On Wednesday, a new one appeared about the winter dance. The world moved. The stones sank. By December, the sharp edges had worn down. People got bored of being cruel, because kindness was more fun again. Chad kept doing the sessions. He stopped traveling in a pack like a car alarm. Once in English, he admitted he didn't understand a poem and asked for help. The room did not laugh. Maya showed him how to find the key image and the turn. He said thanks like he was learning a new language, and she said you're welcome, like she wasn't keeping score. One night, on the driveway, while snow threatened the edges of the sky, Vin taught her how to heel toe, downshift, just because she liked the feel of machines talking to roads. They worked headlights to taillights, the car humming like a living thing. People think power is the loudest thing, he said, wiping his hands. It's usually the quietest. She nodded. Like control, like love, he said, and didn't make it a speech. On the last day before winter break, the halls turned sloppy with hugs and the sugar crash of holiday parties. In film club, Noor screened her short, quiet piece about hands doing ordinary magic, tying a shoe, cutting paper snowflakes, kneading dough. Maya held the boom for a few shots and stayed out of the frame. After, they all clapped and ate cookies without asking if they were vegan. On her way to her locker, Maya found a note folded into a square and tucked through the vent slats.
Ow.
It wasn't the threatening kind. She knew that immediately from the careful folds. She opened it. I didn't know there was another way to be. Thanks for showing me. See, she held it a long time. She didn't show anyone. She didn't need to. On the drive home, she told her father she was thinking of taking the restorative circle in January. One condition, he said. What? You set the tone, not them. You say what you need and what you don't. She thought for a minute, the city going by in quiet lights. Gah. The circle happened on a cold Tuesday when breath showed in the air like secrets you could see. The chairs were set in the counseling room, everyone at the same level. Maya, Chad, the counselor coach, a teacher from Chad's freshman year who knew him as a kid. Mr. Holcomb because Maya asked, and a student mediator who wore a sweater with foxes on it and a competence that seemed older than her years. They spoke. Maya named the harm. Chad didn't deflect. He said he wanted to be different more than he wanted to be admired by people he didn't respect. He said he had watched a man teach a boy to be a man, and he wanted some of that. No one made it a movie. No one made it a headline. They made it a Tuesday. After, in the empty hallway, Maya ran into the sophomore with the phone, the one from the classroom months ago. He looked at his shoes, then at her. I deleted the video, he said, and flushed, with the courage it took to say it. No one saw it but me. I don't know why I did it. I wanted to matter. You do? She said, as simple as opening a door. Choose how. He nodded and escaped before he cried. Spring came in small permissions, no coat in the afternoon. The smell of cut grass, a different song on the radio when people rolled windows down. Maya applied to a summer film program she got in. She told Nora and Vivian first, then her father, who did a ridiculous dance in the kitchen and then pretended he hadn't. On the last week of school, at the awards assembly, 1,000 claps echoed for 100 reasons. When Maya's name was called for the Courage and Community Award, she didn't know where to look. She walked to the stage slow, shook hands, took the small plaque. She didn't search the crowd for her father. She didn't need to. She felt him like a road under her feet. After, as they walked out into the warm sunshine, Vin put his arm around her shoulder. He said nothing for a full minute. Then proud doesn't cover it. It wasn't just me, she said. People showed up. They did. But you taught them how. They passed the spot where the parking lot confrontation had started, now as ordinary as concrete could be. Maya glanced at it, then away. You know what I'm most proud of? She asked. What's that? I didn't make my life about him. She nodded toward the school, or them, or a moment. Vin breathed out a laugh that sounded like relief and recognition and a promise kept.
Ow.
You made it about you. She slipped into the SUV and watched the school recede in the mirror, just a building, just a chapter. Ahead, the road bent toward summer. Her phone buzzed. A group text, beach tomorrow. Nora's string of emojis was almost as long as the coastline. Vivian followed with a photo of cupcakes she'd iced like tiny sunsets. Jacob added a single chestnut and a thumbs up, which made them all roast him for an hour. Maya typed, I'm in. Then she put the phone down and rolled the window just enough to let in a ribbon of air. She rested her head back and closed her eyes. The engine hummed its steady note. The city made its soft noise. Beside her, the man who had chosen her out of a crowd of maybes kept his attention on the road and on her, both at once. They didn't need to say the obvious thing. It was there anyway. Not as a line for a trailer, not as branding, but as a quiet muscle under the skin of their lives. Family, chosen and held, is everything.